Hola, hello. I'm Robert Martinez, State Historian of New Mexico, and this is New Mexico History in 10 minutes. I want you for a moment to think about northern Spain. Let's go to northern Spain to a place called Altamira. It's in Cantabria, near Santiago del Mar, and there's caves there. And in these caves, there are paintings on the ceilings. These are prehistoric Sistine chapels, if you will, and they have handprints, images of warriors and hunters, and deer and bulls, those sacred animals that through the century will ultimately become the bulls we see in the bullfights in modern Spain. Anyway, the early proto-humans of Spain, the first native peoples of Spain, they would go into these caves for protection, for shelter against the elements, against dangerous animals and humans. And they were very much like their human counterparts in the Americas. I want to talk about the Americas and the Americans, the first Americans, the Native Americans. They were here first. They came 10 to 15,000 years ago over the Bering Strait during that ice age that brought them following their food source. They were moving to get away from bigger populations in Asia, and they were following animals, plants, and whatever they could to survive. And when they got to North America, they divided up into various groups and populated North America and then later South America. Many settled in what's today the southwestern United States, where we live in New Mexico. They're the ancestors of the Pueblo people. But there was a group that moved south. They moved south and they had their own way of living, their own agriculture, hunting, and spirituality. They had spiritual leaders, shaman, who told them that when they would reach a place that was a lake, that had an island, that had a cactus with an eagle on it, with a serpent in its mouth, that is where they should settle. This was an omen that they looked for very carefully. And by about the 1300s, they settled in what would become the great city of the Mexica, the Aztecs. That would be Tenochtitlan. This is the foundation, the roots of the great Aztec Empire that would really flourish in the 1400s and into the 1500s. These folks were very much like their counterpart in Inca, the Inca Empire in Peru, South America, and in Egypt and in Mesopotamia. They developed great pyramids. They had mathematics. They enslaved people, and they built empires. So what is an empire? An empire is essentially when one group of people living in their own area goes outside of their own borders to take over another group of people and to impose their government, their culture, their religion, their way of life on other people. That's what an empire is, and everyone's done it. The great Native American empires did it. Mesopotamians did it, Greeks did it, Romans did it, Egyptians did it, the Chinese did it, the great empires of India did it. Everyone has done it. So this is what you have developing in the Americas during, let's say, the high Middle Ages of Europe, the 1200s, and then into the Renaissance, the 13 and 1400s, okay? And this will open up the age of discovery, okay? This is a time period where things really start to change in the world. Things have been evolving and changing over the centuries. Trade from Asia to the Middle East to Europe over the Silk Road, but things will really explode in the 1400s and 1500s when we'll see everything changes and people will do things to each other that are not so nice, and cultures will change, diets will change. But we need to be aware of something. One aspect of empire building over the centuries is slavery. And everyone did this. Greeks did it, Romans did it, Native American peoples did it, Africans did it. But what we have to understand is until we get to the age of discovery, slavery was not based on race or skin color. All it was based on was that you were conquered. If a group conquered another group that looked exactly like they did, the conquered still became the slaves, okay? And the conquerors became the ruling class. So this is what was going on all along with every great civilization, every great empire around the world. But in the Americas, what I want you to think about is just like those folks left Africa 50,000 years ago, went through the Middle East and split off into different groups, so did those early proto-Native Americans thousands and thousands of years ago. So they were one type of people in the northeast part of the North American continent. They were another kind of people in the southwestern United States, and they were another kind of people in what's Mexico and South America. And even in the Caribbean, on those islands, there were Native American groups. But what we do know is that they developed sedentary lives. Some of them did. Many remained nomadic, but some developed sedentary lives with agriculture, with communities, with laws and rules. And what you see happening in the Southwest, in what's today Western New Mexico, is you see these groups growing out of that Four Corners area, going through many different stages that I'll discuss later on, but ultimately establishing a great civilization at Chaco. This is in the 1300s. Think about what's going on in Europe with the great Gothic architecture and the city-states of Europe, the fiefs, small kingdoms. There were no nations yet, but still, you had similar developments in the Americas. But what we need to keep in mind is that the Americans, the Native Americans, what they had not developed was the wheel. They also had not developed traditional writing. They had, similar to what the Egyptians had, they had glyph writing, they had symbols, so they did have a writing system. But they also had not mastered steel, okay? They had not mastered steel, at least not in the way that had been done in the Middle East and in parts of Europe and Africa. Okay, so this is crucial. Another very important aspect was they did not domesticate animals. They did not have domestic animals. So this is important in understanding how things unfold when these two hemispheres come together in the late 1400s and the early 1500s. There's a great series, National Geographic did it. It's called Guns, Germs, and Steel. If you get a chance, watch it. It's an interesting hypothesis that essentially says, rightfully so, that there are no superior races or superior people. There's just the luck of history and the luck of geography, okay? Because what we see happening in the Middle East is farming starts in Mesopotamia, and those early Neolithic people start to move out of the Middle East north into Europe, and they teach Europe how to farm. They bring agriculture. And they also bring domestic animals that I've discussed before, horses, pigs, cows, chickens, goats, and sheep. These are advantages, if you have them, over people who don't. What we see in the Americas is, especially South America, the only domestic animal is the llama. The llama is an amazing animal. It's a pack animal. It can carry a lot of stuff. But you can't ride a llama. You can't ride a llama. And they're so cute. You know, can you imagine? It wouldn't strike much terror into your enemy to be riding into battle on a llama. They're amazing animals. But the native peoples of North and South America did not have the advantages that people in other parts of the world had. So I want you to think about that, because what we're going to discuss next time will be what happens when Cristobal Colón, Christopher Columbus, and his Spanish sailors sail west looking for China, and instead bump into the Americas. Well, this is the start of globalism. Globalism on a worldwide level, and it will change everyone. See you next time. Hasta luego.